Hello everyone, and welcome to our video on the end of the dollar. If I wanted to see just one chart to understand the current economic crisis, the death of the dollar, and money in general, then I would show you this one. This chart shows how the price of a can of tomato soup has changed from 1898 to 2023. As we can see, the price of soup did not change much at all from the beginning of 1895 until 1971, so for over 70 years, the price remained stable at around 10 cents. However, it began to rise in 1971, with an increase that became even more significant after 2020. Why? How did the same soup become 15 times more expensive? If we think about it, 19th century production was much more difficult and expensive, requiring a lot of labor and hard work, mainly because technology had not yet been developed. Today, a machine can probably produce 100 cans in the same time it took to produce only one in the 19th century. How is it possible that despite all these technological advancements and cost reductions, the same soup has become 15 times more expensive? Perhaps the tomato has become more valuable? Of course not. So what has changed? Well, what has changed is not in the soup or the tomato, but rather the dollar. The reason why the price was stable is that until 1971, we were in the Bretton Woods monetary system. With this system, all world currencies were tied to the US dollar, and the dollar was tied to gold. Although the dollar was not 100% backed by gold, it was still sufficient to keep everything under control. However, things changed in 1971 when US President Richard Nixon ended the Bretton Woods monetary system. On that day, all countries stopped using real money, gold and silver, and started using fiat currency. Not having any relationship with gold meant that they could print all the currency they wanted. The real story is that the chart seen earlier tells us that it wasn't the can of soup that changed, but the dollar. The can of soup didn't go up, it's the dollar that went down. Since 1971, no country in the world has used money anymore, we all use currency. What you have in your wallet or bank account is not money, it's currency. There is a big difference between currency and money. Money maintains its value for a long period of time, while currency does not. If someone claims that we use money, then ask them these two questions. Ask them if they believe that money should maintain its value, they will say yes. And ask them if they believe that there is inflation, again they will say yes. Then ask them to explain to you how these two things can exist at the same time. How can we use money and at the same time have high levels of inflation? If what you bought last year now costs you 30% more, then you are not using money, you are using currency. Everything has a cost, even currency. When you buy something, you offer to sell your currency to someone who is willing to buy it from you and pay you for something they own, like a product or service. For example, a store buys currency from you and offers you a product in exchange. Another way to notice it is that every time you sell something that is labor, talent or ideas, you are buying currency. In this case, what is the price of the dollar? In other words, how has the purchasing power of the dollar changed in the last 100 years? Let's take another look at the graph I showed earlier, but in this case it's measured in soup instead of dollars. This graph is basically an upside down version of the previous one, and again the blue line shows the date when money became currency. On the left side of the graph we find the number of cans of tomato soup that was worth $1 silver. On the right side we find the amount of soup that is worth a modern fiat currency, the paper dollar. For the 70 years from 1898 to 1971, a dollar of real money was worth about 10 cans of tomato soup. Today $1 of fiat currency is worth only 2/3 of a can, so not even a can. The dollar has lost about 93% of its purchasing power since 1971. Once again, it was not the soup that changed, but the dollar. Another important concept that you need to understand is the difference between price and value. Price means nothing, value means everything. Although the concept may seem strange at first, this is another essential lesson that will help you decode the true nature of the financial world. Here's how it works: even if the price of something may increase, its value may decrease at the same time. What? How come? Price is just a measure we use to agree on how much in those currencies a product or service will be exchanged. but the value of that same item is what you can buy if you decide to sell it. For example, if an investment doubles in price but the cost of living increases fourfold in the same period of time, then even if your investment doubles in price, its value has actually decreased by half. If the previous example was not clear enough, imagine if I offered you €1 million a month to come work for my company. Sounds incredible, right? €1 million a month. Well, what if you found out that a cup of coffee costs €60,000? And now? Does it still seem like a great salary? Probably not. That's why price means nothing, while value means everything. This is one of the most important lessons that an investor must understand. For example, suppose you bought a house 20 years ago and now the price has doubled. Here's the question, has the value also doubled? Well, it all depends on how you're measuring it. If you measure it against other properties, the answer is absolutely no. Because if you sell your house, you can't buy two similar houses, you can only buy one. So even if its price has doubled when measured against the real estate sector, its value has remained the same. Today, all companies on Earth use fiat currencies, which means their value is constantly decreasing. That's why you can't rely on price to make decisions, but you have to look at value. Unfortunately, today people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Here's a scary fact about fiat currencies. There have been thousands and thousands of fiat currencies in history, but none of them have survived. Their lifespan has been an average of about 27 years, and none of them, not even one, has survived. They have all gone to zero, a failure rate of 100%. By their very nature, all national currencies lose value. They must lose value because they are constantly being printed. You might wonder, if the currency is losing value, then where does that value go? In other words, if the currency in your pocket loses purchasing power, then where does that purchasing power go? Does it vanish into thin air? No. It gets transferred from the currency in your bank account to the entity that created the new currency. Your stolen purchasing power gets transferred to the person who receives the newly created currency first. Imagine it this way, imagine that every newly printed currency is like a thief who secretly comes into your home at night while you're sleeping, takes the currency from your pockets, and then cuts a small piece of it with scissors. Then he goes to your friend's house and does the same thing. He continues to go to every single person who has currency and steals just a little bit from everyone. It's a somewhat simplistic explanation. No one comes to your home and cuts a corner off your currency, but they do cut and steal its purchasing power. Printing new currency literally robs those who already have that currency. With a continuous process of inflation, the government can secretly and unnoticed confiscate people's wealth without even 1 out of a million people realizing the theft, said John Maynard Keynes, the most influential economist of the 20th century. Here's another question you might ask yourself: if currency printing causes a loss of purchasing power and inflation, then why have we had no inflation for several years even when central banks were printing astronomical amounts of currency? Here's the point. Inflation caused by currency creation is never evenly distributed across all areas of the economy, whatever the sector the new currency affects to inflate that sector into a bubble. Perhaps you didn't notice severe inflation from 2000 to 2020 because most retail goods remained relatively cheap, but you certainly noticed that the rich were getting richer, while the stock market and real estate sector were growing. Remember, every new unit of currency must go somewhere. Money creation is inflation, but it is selective inflation. This is the main reason why the stock market grew and the rich got richer. I'll show you two graphs so you can see the correlation for yourself. This first graph shows the correlation between the monetary base and the Wilshire 5000 index. The monetary base simply means how many dollars the U.S. central bank has put into the economy. It is shown with a green line on the graph. The Wilshire 5000 is an index that tracks the performance of the entire stock market in the United States, shown with a black line on the graph. Note that until 2008 there is absolutely no correlation. However, after 2008, once the U.S. central bank started printing currency, the correlation is almost perfect. When the amount of currency increased by 10%, the value of the stock market increased by 10%. When it grew by another 20%, The stock market also grew. The correlation of 97%, do you really think it's just a coincidence? Of course, the stock market has skyrocketed. The stock market is a patient that has been artificially kept alive since 2008, and now the doctor thinks they can pull the plug without the patient dying. Another thing I mentioned is how money printing has made the rich richer and the poor poorer. This graph shows the amount of deposits held by the top 10%, red line, and the bottom 90%, blue line. From the graph, it is easy to see that before America started printing currency until 2008, the bottom 90% was above, owning more than 50% of the deposits, and the top 10% was below, owning less than 50%. But since 2008, when printing began, they have changed positions, and now the top 10% owns 66% of the deposits while the bottom 90% owns only the remaining 33%. Should we blame the rich? No, they didn't do anything wrong. In fact, it's the opposite. They are the people who start businesses and create the products and services we buy, create jobs, and bear incredible burdens and pressures managing their companies. They are the ones who create most of the prosperity in our society, and without them, there would not be much economy, so it's not their fault, it wasn't them. Now I would like to summarize everything said in the video into 3 main lessons, but before doing so, if you think this is a topic that more people should know about, don't hesitate to share the video. But let's get back to the summary. Lesson 1. Know the difference between money and currency. Money holds its value, currency doesn't. Today, no country in the world uses money, we all use currency. Lesson 2. Those in power, emperors and authorities, will always try to extort money. It's a fact that never changes, never. They always find a way to steal it. Just look back in history to find many examples. Lesson 3. Know the difference between price and value. The price means nothing, value is everything. One of the main functions of money is to measure value, but since we no longer use money, you can't trust currencies as a measure of value. Just like other measurement systems such as liters or meters, money also needs to be stable for society to function properly. If you want to know more, I recommend taking a look at Mike Maloney's new book titled The Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century. This video was actually created based on the first few chapters of that book, and there is a lot of information in the book about the economy, money, and the upcoming crisis. It is expected that in the next crisis, gold and silver will perform well. One of the main reasons why he thinks this is right is that never in history have all the countries in the world had legal currencies simultaneously, and never in history has currency been printed on this scale. In fact, just think that gold has a 5,000-year history behind it, has been a store of value for centuries, especially in times like these that we are facing today. I would like to remind you that the things mentioned in this video do not constitute financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor, so I invite you to do your research. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest videos. Stay shining, and keep reaching for the stars with Sirius. See you soon.